Welcome back, grade 12s. It's economics with me, Spiwe. And just before the break, we were looking at the ways that government or how government should actually intervene in terms of protecting the environment, because we know that economics is all about, solving the problem of scarcity, the fact that we've got limited resources and unlimited wants and needs. So the public sector plays a very important role in making sure that we conserve the resources that we have, so that they are not overly exposed to insensitive and even careless use. Okay, and then just before the break, I wanted to make an example in terms of the oceans for fishing. We know that the fishing industry is now being regulated in terms of the endangered species, that there is a certain type of fish that cannot be fished, if I could put it that way, because we are running out of those particular species. So we know where there's an abundance, then the fishermen are encouraged that they can fish that type of fish. But then where we are running out of a particular species, and that industry or market is regulated. And also with pollution, we're going to look at that later on as we progress with our lessons, how businesses or firms are encouraged to minimize pollution, because it's got huge health implications to the households or to the communities around the business. So businesses are really, really encouraged to minimize the pollution as well. And then also for natural scenery, it's so important to have this, because when you're taking a long drive on the N3 or the N1 driving to Cape Town, it is so pleasing to see how beautiful our scenery is, our country, as you drive along through it. So the government is responsible for that, because tourism plays a very important role in the economy. For us to attract tourists to come to our country, we need to make sure that we can actually give them something that they can enjoy, and also wonderful sights that they can enjoy of this beautiful country of ours. Well, now I've done all my marketing as a South African citizen. It's time for us to go back to what we were doing earlier on. Also, they play an important role when it comes to them intervening on the economy. So they intervene in the economy by ensuring or ensures a social or a legislative environment. Okay, by social, just teaching people about the importance of not to litter around, that when you go to Umhlanga for December, once you've done your picnic as a family, or you're sitting there and you had some bottles or items that you brought with you, it's important that you pack up, and whatever that needs to be thrown away, you use the bins that are provided to do that, but don't leave litter lying around. So that's a social thing. But in other industries or in other situations, it has to be put via legislation, that you can't pollute, you can't do this. So hence we say in these environments. And then also they apply suitable and credible economic and development policies. Okay, so there are a number of policies that the public sector has introduced in terms of or how they plan on stimulating economic growth and creating more employment opportunities for South Africans. So that plays an important role when we're looking at policy, because policy has to be credible and it has to be suitable. It's all good to say that, we've got a policy on this, but how effective is your policy and how credible it is? And then how do we determine that a policy is credible? But if we can see that there's been extensive research that has been done in making or in the process of putting together that policy, then we can say that it's credible, because the information is valid, it has been validated, and it's authentic as well, and it can be used to make sound economic decisions. So it's important that they apply suitable and credible economic policies and also development policies as well. How are we going to grow the economy? Promote policies that ensure equal opportunity for all members of society. Okay, so that has been very important in the past couple of years, where the public sector has introduced policies to ensure that there are equal opportunities given to all members of society. Policies like the broad-based Black economic empowerment, policies that look at people that were in previously disadvantaged communities, and now that they are given an opportunity to participate in economic activity. Women didn't have an opportunity to be leaders in companies, although they had the right skills and expertise. So the government is responsible in ensuring that equal opportunities are granted to all. And also limit the anti-competitive behavior. Okay, so that's another important concept. We know that competition is a healthy aspect of the economy, so we encourage competition because then that gives us options as consumers. Okay, so if I don't want to go for firm A or B or C, then D could come up with something that would interest me or grab my attention because of their pricing strategy. So competition ensures that businesses and firms supply quality goods and services, because if they're in a monopoly, they somehow, or in other cases, or in most cases, abuse that power. The fact that they are the sole provider of a particular service or of a particular product, they know that there aren't other competitors in that market space that will compete with them. And it's important that we minimize this anti-competitive behavior where people want to dominate a particular industry because they don't want other firms, so they put barriers of entry into that market to discourage other firms from participating. So anti-competitive behavior needs to be monitored by the public sector, and it is important that they do so because this has a huge impact on the households and consumers as well, if not managed properly. All right, so we know that, every time people talk about the public sector, there are those complaints that come all the time. And there's this perception that the private sector is better than the public sector. But in the honest truth, there are certain services that the public sector provides that the public sector will be unable to provide. So it's important for the public sector to acknowledge where they are going wrong and put measures in place to ensure that they improve on the efficiency and also in the delivery of certain services. So now we are going to look at problems of public sector the problems of the public sector, because with every sector, even in the private sector, there are issues that they have to deal with and manage on a daily basis. And hence also we see that the public sector does have some challenges that they need to deal with in their process of providing these public goods and services. The first thing that I want to discuss is the issue of accountability. Okay. So government is required to make and implement policies. Okay, so they make and they also have to implement the policies. So accountability is underpinned by the ministerial responsibilities, parliamentary questioning, treasury control, and the Auditor General. So I'm going to discuss all of this because it's important. All right, so starting here, so there is a minister that's responsible for the different issues that we mentioned that the public sector is concerned with. So we looked at education, healthcare, social security. So we know there's a minister of basic education, there's a minister of higher education, there's a minister of health, and there's a minister of social services. Okay, so the minister has the responsibility of running that particular portfolio. So if it's education, basic education, so the Minister of Basic Education will then be responsible for running that portfolio of basic education at a national level. Hence, it was important for us to look at the composition of the public sector first before we would discuss these issues, because if we don't have an understanding of that, then we are going to struggle understanding the different compositions that exist within the public sector. So the minister is responsible at a national level. Parliament has a responsibility to ask questions and to interrogate decisions that are made around policy, whether it's economic policy or it's policy relating to education or a healthcare system. And then also Treasury will need to control the finances to ensure that budgets are allocated and that they are used accordingly. And then the Auditor General will come back and do the auditing of the different budgets at national, provincial, and also at a local level. So these are the different stakeholders, shall I call them, that will participate in ensuring that policies are being made and are implemented in the different portfolios where government is supposed to be accountable for certain things. Okay, so the minister will be accountable for a particular portfolio. Parliament will be accountable for asking questions when policies are concerned. Treasury needs to ensure that budgets are allocated and used correctly. And then the Office of the Auditor General will ensure that finances have been used in an accountable and responsible manner. Okay, so I needed to spend a bit of time going over that because it's quite important that we have an understanding of that. And then we've got the public servants, which are required to give an explanation of their decisions and actions. I know that a lot of people get very frustrated when they talk about public servants, people in the public office. But those people have a responsibility to give an explanation of their decisions and actions. Sometimes a MEC or a person that works in the Department of Health can make a decision that could have huge consequences, shall I say, if the decision was not positive. And then that person needs to be accountable for that. They need to answer and say why they made that particular decision. So accountability, it's about, taking ownership and saying, you know what, I was wrong here. And I had made this decision because I thought that things will turn out like this and that. So it's important that we send forward citizens or young people like you sitting there and watching, because you will be in the public office one day working as a director general of a particular department. You've got to know that you will be held accountable for your decisions. And sometimes you would be required to explain why you had taken some of the decisions that you would take in your career. So the public holds government accountable for the effective delivery of services and the implementation of policies. And we know we've been hearing a lot about service delivery, okay? And then also some policies that have come through that, we as ordinary consumers had to engage with them in order to gain understanding and direction that the government is wanting to take. But service delivery, has played an important role in the world of economics, because now you have these consumers that are expecting the government to deliver at a certain time. But the government has all these processes that they have to follow in order to deliver that particular service. So, but we as the public hold the government responsible or accountable for the effective delivery of services and the implementation of policies. And services just don't mean the services, if you go to a public or a public sector department, the licensing department, for example, when you're going to get your ID, the service that is being given to you, you expect it to be of a certain quality, and sometimes we don't get that. I don't want to say we don't often get that, but sometimes we do get it. You come across a person who gives you a really good service, and sometimes the service is a little bit exciting, and then you have to control your temper and all of that. These are the issues or the problems that the government has to manage on a daily basis, the complaints that come in terms of service delivery or the quality of service that is provided by people that work in the public sector. Okay, so let's continue. So we've looked at the public holding the government responsible and accountable. So I'm going to now move on to our next point, and then we're going to look at efficiency. So we've looked at accountability, that at the end of the day, someone needs to be held accountable because there is a person or a committee that has made that decision. So they need to explain why they made that particular decision. What was the thought process behind the making of that decision? And then they need to give their reasons as to why they made that decision. And if the decision was or is considered to be wrong, and then they must then take accountability for the decision that they have made. So it's important for public office bearers to understand the consequences of sometimes not making or following the correct procedures and not making the right decisions, that it will come back to you and you will have to answer for your actions. So before I carry on with efficiency, we are going to take a short break, and then we'll be back right after this. Stay tuned.